I didn't do anything. I'm innocent.
Paul Francis Gadd, also known as one Gary Glitter. You are hereby charged with Category 1 sex offences.
To those people who prey on our children, our message is clear. We will find you, we will prosecute you, and then we will put you to death.
You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence. You do not mention, when questioned, something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Have a nice day.
Okay. We're in the interview room here in Uxbridge. It's 14:26. Before I get into the timeline, I just need to run through some basics with you. Mr. Gadd, could you confirm your date of birth for me, please?
Google me.
Wonderful thing, the internet, isn't it, Paul? For the record, Mr. Gadd is refusing to confirm his date of birth. Okay. Do you want a drink of anything?
Oh. Bloody Mary, please. Bag of nuts. Easy on the Worcestershire.
How do you feel to be back in London, Mr. Glitter?
Touching down at Heathrow this morning, Paul Gadd, aka Gary Glitter, convicted child sex offender, released from a Vietnamese jail on Tuesday. Glitter finally boarded a plane for London last night.
Thank you.
His reluctant return after serving nearly 3 years in a Vietnamese jail for sex offences ended several days of playing cat and mouse with the authorities in Thailand and Hong Kong. They didn't want him. The British Justice did.
I think it's fair to say that we were really keyed up. We'd been wanting to speak to Mr. Gadd for quite some time now. We do have the power to monitor offenders who we believe may have been committing crimes abroad and subsequently bring them to justice in British courts. But those powers have never really been tested, so yeah, we were in uncharted territory. Well, Mr. Gadd had been convicted of molesting young girls. However, there was evidence to suggest that he'd been committed other crimes whilst in Vietnam. And eventually we found that we did have enough evidence to charge Mr. Gadd with rape. So we arrested him. On the 4th of June 2005, an 11-year-old girl slept in your bed. Is that or is that not correct?
She slept on the bed. I slept in it.
And what do you wear in bed, Paul?
Well, not much. What do you wear?
So you were naked?
Yes.
And what can you tell us about the other girls who you brought to your house?
Look. They weren't girls. They were young women. I happen to find young women attractive. Is not unusual, my friend. Look, I'm not what you think I am. I'm being set up.
And who's setting you up, Paul?
Gary Glitter will appear before a district judge at Uxbridge Magistrates Court today in his first appearance since his shock arrest 2 days ago on fresh child sex charges. He will speak only to confirm his address and his real name, Paul Francis Gadd.
Speculation is mounting that Glitter could become a test case for controversial new legislation giving police the power to prosecute offenders for crimes committed overseas.
Mr. Gadd. Good to meet you. I'm John Carter. I'm going to be your defence counsel. Is it all right if I call you Paul? Mm-hmm. Good. Please feel free to call me John. We're going to be spending quite a lot of time with each other in the near future. First things first, please, I don't want you to worry about anything that's going on outside. Television, newspapers, the police. Please just let me worry about all of that.
That'd be nice.
Right, so I have to say, I was a bit surprised when I got your paperwork, as I'm sure you were too.
Tell me about it. It's a Billy Smart circus out there.
Right, well, I suppose you want to know what's going to happen with you next. I'm not going to bullshit you, but there's absolutely no chance of you getting bail.
Terrific.
Yeah. Well, that's the bad news. The good news, however, is that every aspect of this case is completely untested law. So I'm very confident of success in this case.
Well, you should be, because there is no case.
Well, that's great. That makes my job that much easier. The first thing we'd like to do is put in an application to dismiss.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these charges are extraterritorial.
Pardon?
They're talking about things that happened, you know, halfway across the world.
Can they do that?
Well, you're here, aren't you? But look, best case scenario, out of here in a couple of days, we pack up the big top and we'll go home. Worst case scenario, however, is, well, I'm sure you're aware of the recent changes in the law.
No.
So, obviously you haven't been watching much television.
It's all crap, isn't it? So, bringing in tougher penalties for naughty boys, what, 10 years?
No, no, I'm talking about your life.
Life sentence?
No, Paul, I'm talking about your life.
Nah.
Step to the line. Raise your arms.
So with Gary Glitter behind bars tonight on child rape charges and facing a potential death sentence, Barney Phillips looks back at the long road that has led to this moment.
Thank you, John. Well, of course, the return of the death penalty was the culmination of a passionate campaign by bereaved families of murder victims, survivors of child sex abuse, and ordinary members of the public sickened by the horrific crimes of Ian Huntley in Soham.
A young couple are tonight assisting police with their inquiries into the disappearance of Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman.
Ian Huntley's own mother told the world just what she thinks of her killer son. What he did was unforgivable. He should be hanged, she said.
For me, the turning point was when Ian Huntley struck in Soham. I mean, I felt from that moment on we were not prepared to be talked down to, patronised and ignored any longer, when in fact we were speaking for millions of people in this country.
After Soham, the demand from the public was capital punishment for all paedophiles. I mean, clearly that was going to be impossible and quite inappropriate. But what was clear was the existing penalties for these kind of atrocities no longer sufficed.
I look at it on a view, if someone killed my little girl, I'd want them dead. You know, like, I wouldn't want it any other way.
All the do-gooders that sit in their big houses and, you know, we don't want this and we don't want that. Like I said, they're do-gooders. They live in a house, their next door neighbour's 10 miles down the road. They don't walk the same streets we walk, so it doesn't affect them, and that's why they're all against it.
Outside of the Westminster bubble, outside of the Fleet Street bubble, outside of television, most people believe in the death penalty. Most people think the death penalty is not just about revenge, it's about justice. Justice for the victim.
Huge crowds marched on Westminster today to demand the return of the death penalty. Meanwhile, the new government, eager to display its populist credentials, has declared it will not be banned by European laws forbidding member states from adopting capital punishment.
For years, there's been an assumption that as society gets more civilised and doesn't have a death penalty, it's going to be a much gentler, kinder, more decent society to live in. Now look at the society we do live in as a result of all that thinking. It's a society in which children kill each other. The murder rate has absolutely shot up. You've got rampant paedophilia. That's the society which all this so-called enlightened thinking has created. And it's because we've lost sight of one very fundamental fact. There is such a thing as evil. And if you do not fight it, it will eventually triumph.
In extraordinary scenes in the Palace of Westminster tonight, MPs debate the Human Rights Act, which would pave the way for legislation. The debate went right to the wire, with those against the proposal trying anything to scupper the vote.
The ayes to the right, 316. The noes to the left, 311.
There's just a tremendous feeling of elation, a feeling of having achieved something really significant. The liberal parasites on our back have been thrown off, and at last justice was going to be done.
We have seen too much sadness, witnessed too much grief, felt too much pain. To those people who prey on our children, our message is clear. We will find you, we will prosecute you, and then we will put you to death.
Yeah, climb your rope, bro. Do you want to be a bar gang, son?
Hi, Paul. So, bad news, I'm afraid. The application to dismiss has been struck out.
Meaning?
Meaning that the judge has now ruled that the case must go to trial.
Wonderful. They're not going to rest till they serve me up on a plate, are they?
Well, listen, it'll more than likely be heard at the Old Bailey, which is actually quite good for us because they're used to dealing with high-profile cases. The judges, they're all very experienced. Nobody's going to hyperventilate. It'll all be kept very calm and clinical, which is actually how we want it. However, we are going to have to enter a plea. Now, I don't want to see you lose your life, so I think you know what I'm going to ask you to say.
I'm not pleading guilty, if that's what you mean.
OK, Paul, look, what you have to try and understand is that we're talking about saving your life. And a guilty plea is a surefire way of doing that.
I don't need treatment. There's nothing wrong with me.
Look, I understand this is difficult, I do. But you have to know that a guilty plea is heavy mitigation and a jury is far more likely to look favourably on you.
I haven't done anything.
All right, listen to me. Judges, and especially juries, don't like to see kids dragged into court, made to go through the evidence all over again. They just don't. And in the event of a conviction...
In the event of a conviction, what?
In the event of a conviction, they're much more likely to pass a death sentence.
Don't fucking judge me.
Paul, there are 12 men and women who'll do that. That's their job. My job is to try and save your life.
What? Innocent men don't do deals.
Disgraced rocker Gary Glitter entered a plea of not guilty today on charges of raping 2 girls in Vietnam. If convicted, Glitter could face the death penalty in what would be the first state execution in nearly half a century.
Oh, Gary Glitter put the fun and exuberance back into pop at a time when we really needed it because rock had got very self-important and very up itself and arty and taking itself too seriously. And the whole glitter movement came along and it was a great explosion of fun and energy.
Gary Glitter was a massive hit in my playground, I have to say, but he was massive with the under 10. And there are all these songs we could sing, you know. We just thought he was the king, the Don, to be honest.
In many ways, he was ridiculous. In many ways, he was absolutely absurd. Here was this bloke who, he looked like Liberace's fat son, didn't he? He looked like, he was a ham, he was a hack. You couldn't take him seriously. He was like 15 stone of cabaret turkey done up in bako foil. And yet, he was lovable. There was something about his naffness that we could relate to because it was very innocent.
Gary Glitter struck a showbiz pose when he arrived at Bristol Crown Court today, but deep down he knew he was looking at a possible jail sentence. The court heard he often spent 12 hours at a time downloading thousands of internet pictures. He pleaded guilty to 54 offences of making indecent photographs of children under 16, and it was for this that he was jailed for 4 months. Tonight, Gary Glitter is tarnished forever as a sex offender.
There was a tremendous sense of letdown, tremendous betrayal of everyone who, I mean, because you loved him as a kid.
Because he appealed to kind of little kids and grannies, which he did do at his height, he was always seen as a family entertainer. So we loved him. We had a relationship with him before. We thought he was great. We were on his side. And so for him to then be revealed as public enemy number 1, which all paedophiles are, was a big shock.
Wait. Ken, you could go down.
I deeply regret doing what I was sent to prison for. I've served my time. I want to put it all behind me. And live my life.
What are your plans now, Gary?
As Gary Glitter prepares to stand trial on child rape charges, lawyers in Strasbourg today confirmed they're withdrawing their challenge to the UK's death penalty laws in the face of the British government to quit the EU altogether. The former singer continues to maintain his innocence in spite of an overwhelming body of evidence against him.
Cháu ở Cần Thơ, gần Vũng Tàu. Cháu học cấp 3. Trường cháu được nghỉ học. Cô cháu đến dẫn cháu đi biển chơi. Cô ấy dẫn em bằng xe máy. Cô ấy bảo đi thăm bạn của cô ở nước ngoài.
Well, Mr. Gadd rented a house at number 38, I think it was, Tran Phu Street, in the resort of Vung Tau, which is in southern Vietnam. And whilst there, he invited prostitutes over to spend several days with him, and they would charge him for sex. Now, some of these girls were over 18, others were not. Now, I mean, that in itself is a serious offence. These were vulnerable young girls who were being exploited and below the legal age of consent. And in most cases, I think a lot of them were drawn into prostitution purely and simply in order to survive. But I think then that wasn't enough for Mr. Gadd, and consequently he went out looking for younger girls.
Thì cháu mới gặp chú đây, cháu thấy cũng tốt người. Sau đó cháu chơi lăng quăng ở đấy. Chú đây hỏi cháu có muốn xem tivi không? Chuyện gì xảy ra sau đó? Thì chú đây chiếu một băng video. Băng kiểu gì? Băng ấy chiếu người làm bậy bạ với nhau. Cháu cảm thấy như thế nào? Cháu không thích. Chú đấy bảo It's okay, don't worry. Xong chú đấy đi khỏi phòng. Khoảng 2-3 phút chú đấy lại, xong hỏi cháu You want shower không?
When she got out of the shower, PFG held her and put his hands on her, fondling her all over her body. After that, he put her on his bed and rubbed his penis all over her body. Then he put his penis inside her vagina. He ejaculated inside her. On the 15th of June, around 6 p.m, the same pattern of events took place. At night, girl A slept in PFG's bed. She was told not to tell anyone what had happened and not to speak about it to her mother. Now we come to girl B, 10 years old.
It's all bollocks.
Great. Okay, well, denial is fine, but we're going to need to make a response.
Look, everything was very cool. Keeping myself to myself. I had to get out of the UK because of what happened before. Then bang. Big mistake. I go to this expat club. Someone recognises me, calls the press. They haven't let me alone since. So ask yourself, would you send someone up all the way to Vietnam and not get a story? No. You can buy anything. Witnesses, documents, anything.
Including young girls?
You can buy young girls' silence once they start telling lies about you. That's the interesting thing.
So, is there anything else you need?
Yeah. Decent 4-track with a hard drive. Built-in preamps and a proper compressor. It's all going into the next album. All of it.
I did try to put him at his ease and give him every opportunity to talk to us. And it just seemed that As I said before, I mean, he just didn't want to play ball. I don't think he thought it was going to come to anything. And heaven knows what he was going on in his head.
No comment.
Can you not help us in any way? I mean, if you weren't involved, just tell me. If I'm on the wrong track, just tell me, because I don't want to be on the wrong track. Okay. If I'm wrong, just tell me. Say, I'm wrong. Can you not help me in any way at all?
No comment. No comment.
The Gary Glitter trial opens at the Old Bailey today amidst intense speculation that the former rock star could become the first person to be executed in the UK in more than 46 years.
It was extraordinary. You know, I'm a barrister of some experience. In all my professional time, I'd never seen anything quite like it. To be honest, I was a bit flabbergasted. I slightly had to pinch myself because I really thought that this case would never get this far.
The trial has sharply polarised opinion, sparking ugly scenes of confrontation between human rights groups and those in favour of capital punishment.
It was quite weird for me because I got sent to cover the trial and I'd never really covered a trial before because, you know, I write about music, but they thought that would be a good angle. And I don't know what I expected. I think I expected to see a shuffling old man, and actually he came in quite proud. He'd scrubbed up really nicely and he had an air about him. He had a kind of arrogance. He was the leader of the gang.
Your Lordship, and may it please the court, the evidence will show that Mr. Gadd cynically sought out and befriended small children, abused their trust, and raped them. The evidence will prove that Mr. Gadd is guilty of repeated, persistent, and determined sexual depravity, and is a menace to children everywhere. Detective Chief Inspector, could you please describe the nature of the images recovered from Mr. Gadd's beach house?
It was Category 5 pornography.
Can you explain to the court what you mean by Category 5 pornography?
Category 5 is the most extreme material. In this case, videos and pictures depicting the rape and torture of small children.
The rape and torture of small children.
Oh, God. God, I didn't realise it. Sorry.
Mrs. Tran, can you tell the court what your daughter said when you asked her about the baseball cap in her possession?
Con tôi cầm chiếc mũ về, tôi có hỏi. Nhưng con tôi khóc thì tôi cũng phải tiếp tục khóc như thế. Nhưng tôi không biết làm sao được. Thì ôm con tôi vào lòng, tôi cũng khóc tiếp tục. Nhưng bây giờ tôi không biết làm như thế nào được thì tôi có gọi là ôm thương con tôi.
Dr. Jones, can you confirm that the item of clothing in front of you, a pair of children's shorts, is the garment from which the defendant's DNA profile was retrieved?
That is correct, yes.
And what, in your expert opinion, is the likelihood of the DNA profile recovered belonging to somebody other than the defendant?
Approximately 1 in 600,000.
The facts and the evidence against Mr. Gadd were certainly stacking up. I felt really the only card that I could play with any validity to counter this was to challenge really the trustworthiness of the evidence presented. DNA profiling, how legitimate, how well carried out they are in places such as Vietnam, and indeed also the validity of the witnesses. Dr. Jones, you've told this court that the DNA profile recovered from that item of clothing can be reliably matched with that of the defendant, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Wonderful science, DNA, isn't it? So, no doubt then, you can also tell us how long that DNA material had been present on that item of clothing.
Not with any degree of accuracy, no.
Not with any degree of accuracy? So, is it therefore possible that Mr. Gadd's DNA came into contact with Girl A's clothing at a later date? After his arrest, for example?
Theoretically, it's possible, yes.
No, I didn't ask you if it was theoretically possible, Dr. Jones. I asked you if it was really possible.
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Tran, let's talk about your third brother, one Mr. Vong Tran. Perhaps you'd be so kind as to tell the court what your brother's occupation is.
Anh trai tôi làm công an.
A policeman, I see. And perhaps you'd be so good as to tell the court which department your brother works for.
Anh trai tôi làm ở Vũng Tàu.
Vung Tau?
Vũng Tàu.
Which happens to be the place where the defendant was originally arrested and detained. Now, I'm not for one moment casting any doubt on the credibility or the professionalism of the Vung Tau Constabulary. But is it possible, just possible, that there might have been a mix-up in the lab?
My lord, isn't this merely conjecture?
Mr. Carter.
Madam, I put it to you that you and your family stood to gain a great deal of money from this story. No doubt the offers are already flooding in.
No, không, nhà tôi không phải là cái người tham tiền. Con tôi bị như thế, tôi rất là đau khổ rồi. Cho gia đình nhà tôi tuy rằng nghèo, nhưng tôi không có tham tiền. Không phải là người tham tiền.
My lord, may I ask where this is going?
As my friend well knows, what we are saying is this family is lying for financial gain.
I think we've seen more than enough of this. Madam, you may stand down. Mr. Carter, do you propose to call any witnesses?
Yes, just one, your lordship. The defence calls Mr. Paul Francis Gadd.
It was amazing. They said, the defence said, we call Paul Francis Gadd. And I mean, really, it was like a kind of a bomb had gone off, really, to be honest. We were just like, what? He's going to speak? We couldn't believe it, because traditionally, you know, if you're accused of those kind of crimes, you do not take the stand, because everybody hates you. And he did. So just before he came up, before he spoke was the most electric time in that court.
Well now, Mr. Gadd, inappropriate contact with prepubescent girls, grooming young children for sexual purposes, child rape. These are the allegations against you. Is there any truth in what they say?
No. Many years ago, I remember my manager gave me a piece of advice. He said, in this business, never forget. Always be nice to people on the way up, because on the way back down, they'll bite you in the arse. So, if I'd listened to him then, maybe I wouldn't be here now. Look, I'm vain. I suppose I'm arrogant. I always have been. You know, the money, success, it changes things. 1972, 73, 74, I was one of the top selling artists in the country, you know? I just had to pick up a phone and there'd be a plane or a Rolls. got the drugs, you got the booze, and you got people throwing themselves at you. I've been there. Now, I will stand here now, and I'll hold up my hand, and I'll say, yeah, sometimes, maybe, I did go close to the edge. But there's a line, and I know where that line is. And I have not crossed that line. Now, fair enough, I'm no angel. But I am not a monster.
Thằng khốn nạn, thằng mất dạy. Tao trông thấy mày thì tao muốn giết mày đi. Muốn đập chết mày đi. Thằng khốn nạn này mày đừng có ra đường nữa. Mày mất dạy. Mày làm như thế. Mày là tử tế chứ. Mày là con người là tử tế mà thằng khốn nạn này.
Control yourself or I shall have you removed from the court.
Thế à hả? Mà sao tao giết chết mày đi.
Very well. Remove that woman.
Mr. Gadd, what was it that took you to Vietnam?
Well, I couldn't stay here, could I? Like I said, I was being harassed. I couldn't go outside my door. Where was I supposed to go?
Mr. Gadd, I put it to you that you were in Vietnam for an altogether different pursuit.
No,
the premeditated and calculated assault of innocent children.
No, it's not that.
Let's talk about the events of the 4th of June 2005. Mr. Gadd, are you in the habit of sleeping in the same bed as 11-year-old girls?
No.
But you were prepared on that particular occasion to make an exception.
Look, a lady friend of mine said, can I bring a relative over? I didn't even know who she was. She came in my room in the middle of the night, said she was scared of ghosts.
And you comforted her?
I was under all this pressure. There's all this pressure on me.
Pressure?
Yeah, pressure. It's the heat, the air conditioning, mosquito nets, my girlfriend. Oh. Look, everything's being twisted here.
But you did sleep in the same bed.
Look. She turns up at my house, with a little smile and strutting around in her skimpy little shorts. Well, just look, it's... I didn't touch her. But it's obvious what kind of girl she is.
He's guilty. The juror's historic verdict in Glitter Trial.
In hushed tones, the single word guilty was read out again and again.
When that guilty verdict came in, my reaction was just total jubilation. I was punching the air. Of course, yes, about bloody time. It proves that we actually can inflict punishment on people, even when they're celebrities. The celebrity status counts for nothing now. People are the same. They should pay the same for their price for their crimes. And it was so good to see. He should have been strung up on the neck from the nearest lamppost as soon as he was found guilty, I think.
We always felt that it was imperative that jury sentencing be built into the process. Now, it's a system that's been used very successfully in the United States. Now, the point here is this: a penal system has to be rooted in the values of the community it serves.
Without that link, how can the punishment reflect the standards of that society?
What's going to happen? Well, they could come back with the death penalty.
What are they really gonna do?
Well, the way it works is this. The jury could recommend an application for leniency if they believe that there were sufficient mitigating circumstances that would make the death penalty an excessive punishment. They could instead request a life sentence. But if they didn't do that, then death penalty really was the only option. So yeah, his life was truly in their hands.
I'm going to tell you something, and then I'm going to sit down. Why does Paul Gadd deserve to die? You want me to tell you why? Well, I am going to tell you. Because an adult who takes a child into his home and has the care and custody of that child has the ultimate trust in the world. Adults give us love. They give us comfort. They teach us who we are. Teach us who we are. And the rape of a child is the ultimate evil. Morally, perhaps it is worse than murder. All of us, in theory, are capable of killing. If we are sent to fight in a war, we might have to kill. But what right-minded person could even begin to envisage contemplating an assault on the most trusting members of our society? It is a repulsive act that flies in the face of our natural instincts. Do your jobs, ladies and gentlemen. Do not triumph in it. Feel no anger. But feel no remorse. For the law has designed itself in such a way to make it clear that those who commit offenses such as this and have been convicted after fair trial will face a fair sentence. And I submit to you that the fair, just, harsh sentence as prescribed by law is that of death.
In a 3-hour summing up, the prosecution urged the jury to impose a death sentence by painting a picture of Glitter as pure evil. It's expected that Glitter's legal team will now try and convince the jury that taking the singer's life for what he has done would be as morally wrong as Glitter's crimes themselves.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this has been without question one of the most devastating things I think I've ever been through. I've thought of very little else for weeks now. Endless, sleepless nights thinking only on this, as I am sure all of you have too. So let's not be in any doubt what the death penalty means. This man will be taken from this place. At a given time, he will be restrained. He'll be taken to a room, placed upon the gallows, a noose put around his neck, and he will be dropped. And if he is lucky, his neck will break swiftly. That is what the death penalty means. And the people being asked to end his life are you. You will be the first people in 46 years to send a man to his death. You are to be the trendsetters. Now, with you, Mr. Gadd is in no way a friend of mine. His actions revolt me. He disgusts me. He may even be evil. But in taking his life, are your actions not equally disgusting, equally revolting, equally evil? His life is in your hands.
Members of the jury, have you reached a unanimous verdict?
Yes.
We find no mitigation and hereby sentence the defendant to death.
Mr. Gadd, your conduct shows that you have not the slightest remorse for what you have done. Quite the contrary. There's no mitigation. You will be taken from this place to a lawful prison where you will suffer death in the manner authorized by law, sentenced to take place within 30 days. Court is dismissed.
Britain is waking up this morning to the news that former glam rock star Gary Glitter, real name Paul Gadd, is set to become the first person to hang in the UK in 46 years. Gadd, whose execution must be carried out within 30 days, will be moved to condemned cell sometime this week.
I think it's good, you know, get rid of him, like, so he can stop
Take
doing
away
what
children's innocence, don't they? Take away children's innocence, ruin their lives,
Yeah.
just get rid of him.
Yeah, well, I don't think they really should have the death penalty, but I think he should die.
To have the courts and the justice system in this country to accept our point of view, you know, proves that the people who sat in judgment on us, calling us chavs and ignorance, were very wrong.
The capital punishment, the death penalty, do you think that will help reduce crime in this country?
Definitely. If you're killed for doing something like that, you will not dare do it in the first place. So I think it will reduce, yeah.
It's terrible. I think anybody should have the chance to redeem themselves, whatever they've done. There must be something they can do to make up for it.
What do you think of all the human rights protesters who say, you know, we're going back in time to as far back as far?
Let their children be abused, then see what they've got to say.
We're just taking you to the block, Paul. You'll be all right, mate. You'll be all right.
One of the main arguments against the death penalty was that it was inhumane. But all the research indicated that it was the waiting, the endless appeals process that was inhumane. So, by allowing a maximum of 30 days between sentencing and execution, the slow drip of waiting year upon year for the sentence to be carried out, as happens all too often in the United States, will not be reproduced in the UK.
Hi, Paul. How's everyone treating you?
Oh, never mind about that. There's got to be some kind of appeal. What, Europe? Human rights?
Paul, I said I'd never bullshit you. There was a piece of paper, it was called the European Convention on Human Rights, but that's all it ever was, a piece of paper. Sorry. So all we can do now is put in a stay of execution on humanitarian grounds. I'll be on the Home Secretary's desk in the morning.
Not executions! Solutions! Not executions! Solutions! Not executions!
The verdict in the Glitter trial continues to produce an emotional response, with rival groups of protesters setting up camp outside Pentonville Prison in North London. Meanwhile, an unauthorised sound recording of Glitter's now infamous speech in the witness box has been sampled into a remix version that's become an overnight sensation on YouTube.
You're making the monsters out of these people. They are people.
You suggested
you
that if we
letting
took away the hanging, there would be less monsters out there? No way! He deserves everything.
He's a
and
human
I'm very
being.
happy about
I know
it.
he's a
have to
human
say.
being. And
Think about the child. Think about the innocent child whose life's been ruined for 1 minute. I feel
Looking
a
forward
great
to it,
sense
are
of
you?
pride.
This is something out of the Dark Ages. This is worse than that. This is barbaric. You don't believe that human beings have the right to live?
Don't talk to me about human rights.
You think you're
it's human
civilized?
to allow someone like him back on the streets to rape and murder?
Back
Do you
on
call
the
yourself
streets?
civilized?
Is it our human instinct to exterminate?
No, it's our
Is
human
it?
instinct
I
to
thought it was
protect
to
our
survive.
children. And if you don't like it, go and live somewhere else.
Room service.
Well, somebody loves you, Paul. You've got fan mail.
Gary, listen, I love you, Gary. It's me. I understand you, Gary. Please, Gary.
Reverend David Sanders.
It's the preacher man. Oh, welcome to death row. What is it, last rites?
Not exactly. I'm David Sanders, and I'm just going to be here. If you want to talk.
Wow, hallelujah.
In the United States, I've accompanied 37 men into the execution chamber. I never set out to do executions. I set out to do chaplaincy. It was never in the job description. It's just the way it happened. And then colleagues here in the UK put me forward for the role. I think it was felt that they wanted someone who was comfortable with the job.
3 years in a Vietnamese jail, Rev. No chance.
I'm John Laws. I've been a prison officer for 24 years, until obviously this job came up. I went for the interviews, and after all the usual psychological evaluations and all the mumbo-jumbo, they decided I was the man for the job. I'm called officially a hanging technician. I think they think that words like hangman come with a bit too much baggage. Let's go upstairs, shall we? Now just watch where you put your feet here, guys. This is a live area. Be very careful. You see up here the beam. This is it. This is where the rope is suspended. Because of the rope being as it is, we need to use sandbags like these over here, which will hang on the rope overnight to stretch it so there's no play in the rope when the actual event happens. On the day, once the prisoner's in place, I will remove the safety catch here. That brings the whole floor live. Right, there should be nobody standing on there other than the prisoner. And then at the precise moment, I'm going to pull this handle, and I'll move it in that direction. Trapdoor will open, the prisoner will fall. And then that's it. That is what the prisoner thinks is a bookshelf. In fact, it's a sliding door that leads straight into his cell.
Not just a pretty face.
Don't fret. I'm used to being underestimated. See, they think they know me. They're not going to execute Paul Gadd.
You're keeping strong, Paul. That's good.
It's not me. It's the fans. They were always there. They'll pick me up. And you know why? Because I give them a bloody good show, that's why. Looks like this is the biggest of them all.
His mood seems pretty positive. I think he's still holding hopes of a reprieve. He's got a bulletin board in his cell where he's been cutting out all the newspaper articles. He's been posting them all up. He's been reading them very carefully, as well as I think he's actually writing a few songs.
He's writing songs?
That's what's on the board.
Clip those onto there. Make sure you've tightened up that when you've fastened them on. Okay. Draw up, great. Just push them in the middle. That's it, and we're ready to go.
Step onto the scales now, please.
there you go. That's it.
With just one day to go before his execution, sources within Pentonville say Gary Glitter is in good spirits and confidently predicting he'll be granted a last-minute reprieve. The troubled singer has been talking about a return to the stage, an autobiography, even a world tour. All eyes now are on the Home Secretary Valerie Clark, whose power to commute Glitter's death sentence now remains his only hope.
Well, of course, it's going to be tense to an extent. The thing is, not letting it show. I certainly don't think that I'm going to get any personal satisfaction from ending another man's life. But I hope I'll be able to do it with a sense of detachment. When I look at the prisoner, I don't know what I'm going to feel. I may feel butterflies, but at the same time, psychologically, I'm not going to carry anything with me.
Get your bargains here, get your bargains here. We've got T-shirts, we've got mugs, we've got nooses.
Members of the public are already gathering outside Pentonville Prison, where Paul Francis Gadd is currently being held in seclusion. Despite a heavy police presence aimed at preventing the ugly clashes we saw last week between supporters and opponents of capital punishment, there's an almost carnival atmosphere. Music, burger vans, even people hawking T-shirts and glitter memorabilia have set up shop. The only difference is on one side of the police lines, the T-shirts read, "Gary Glitter must hang," while on the other side they beg, "Save the leader."
Every prisoner is different. Some of them want to talk and talk and talk, and then some of them want to remain totally silent. Some of them want to watch a clock. Most don't, but and if they don't want to know what the time is, I won't tell them.
Every island nation has its own mythical story about itself, and that's certainly part of our story, that we are an unusually polite, civilized culture, and have been for centuries, haven't we? And that underneath our civility, of course, we still remain a culture that have primal curiosities about horrible things, all the way from the early 18th century all the way through to the end of public execution. What the observers would comment on was the holiday atmosphere. 50,000 people, or even 100,000 people gathering to watch the great executions. Of course, we're not all that different now.
Amid scenes of growing unrest in the capital, there's speculation this morning that the Home Secretary has pulled back from the brink in the Glitter death penalty case in the face of sustained pressure from Britain's European allies.
Making a judgment on an appeal in a capital crime case is not something that anybody would want to have to do. Because what one was having to balance was the anger of the public. And that was very, very strong. All the arguments, all the discussions, and against that I was having to weigh up a man's life. course, in the end, this was the hardest decision of my career.
Hi, Paul. For the reasons assigned herein, the defendant's conviction and death sentence are affirmed. This judgment is final.
Close the door. And lock it. Yeah. Safe.
So, who'll be there?
I'll be there. A doctor, the governor, some witnesses.
What witnesses?
Home office people. Press.
Will the families be there?
Yes. Paul, I'm going to turn the tape recorder on now. I'd like to say.
Yes, there is. I've written this down. To the people who have supported me, I'm sorry if I've let you down. But what's about to happen? It's wrong. This execution is wrong. I want my rights. I want my life. To my sons and my daughter, know in your hearts I've always loved you. And our things haven't always been right between us. I can't find the words. Oh, that's all. Yes, that's all.
which means that this week's top-selling track, 36 years after first topping the charts, he's back at the top. Banned and kicked into touch by the BBC, but still breaking all the download records. Yes, he was. The leader, Britain's undisputed number one.
Monster, 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 monster. Fair enough, I'm no angel, but I am not a monster. Do you wanna be? Do you wanna be? Do you wanna be?
Taken from this place.
They'll bite you in the arse.
You have the right to remain silent.
I'm vain, got the drugs, got the booze, I'm no angel. And I'll hold up my hand, I'll say, I am not a monster.
Will be taken from this place.
1972, 73, 74, in this country, I'm no angel. In this country.
You have the right to remain silent.
In this country, got the drugs, got the booze. In this country, and I'll hold up my hand, I'll say, in this country, in this country, in this country, got the drugs, got the booze. In this country, a monster, in this country.
You will be taken from this place.
Monster, 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 no angel. Monster, 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 no angel. Monster, monster, in this country, got the drugs, in this country, a monster.
Arms. Follow me.
Glasses! I need my glasses! Lord! This isn't happening! My name's Paul Francis Gadd. I haven't done anything. I haven't done anything. There's got to be a wind-up.
Stand clear.
I'm an innocent man. I haven't done anything.
for more information and to join a discussion with the programme makers, go online now at channel4.com and search for The Execution of Gary Glitter. 2 Indian restaurants go head-to-head in a fiery episode of Gordon Ramsay's F Word tomorrow night at 9, while next tonight, can Ugly Betty get sexy after the break?